JP Morgan plans to buy a stake in Twitter through its social networking fund, which would value the micro-messaging online service at $4.5 billion. For more on the power of these tech valuations that keep going up and up and up, we're joined by the veteran dealmaker, Kim Fennebresque, the chairman of Dahlman Rose. Kim, great to have you back.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
John Shield, of course, here with me as well. What do you make of these valuations for these companies?
Well, I'm old enough to have seen this before, that's for sure. I think I'm not a social networker,
Sure.
so this is below my age bracket. I don't understand the general concept of wanting to monitor every step everybody takes, but it seems to have caught on. What I find most interesting is a valuation of $4.5 billion for a company that hopes to have ad revenues of $150 million next year. That is, I think, a 30 times forward revenue multiple. I cut that class in finance, but that's really something.
But right, and what I'm hearing underlying that is that, look, as these companies pile in, or these funds pile in at higher and higher valuations, are any of them really going to make their money back?
Well, I think there's a different level of scrutiny and judicious examination of these companies. And I think people believe now that these are real money-making enterprises. These are not four guys in a dorm with a plan and going to a venture capital firm and getting a $10 billion valuation. These are real companies that are proven business models. Whether they end up making money or not at these levels is another question. But these businesses clearly will survive and flourish.
And Kim, do you think other Wall Street firms are going to get into this business of setting up funds to invest in Twitter and Facebook, following JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs as well?
You know, it appears, John, that the interest here is in social networking companies, right? I don't know how broad-based this is going to be, and I don't know what the demand is for funds for social networking companies. I know there's a huge, talent stretch in Silicon Valley, but my guess is others will follow. Venture capital firms have been doing this for a while.
Right.
JP Morgan has had a venture capital business in the past, so I'm sure they feel they have some expertise. Whether others pile in, if history is any prelude, they will.
No, and I guess that's my point. Back in the 90s, we saw this exact same thing happen, right? All the investment banks had these new .com funds to try and keep their employees, not going to Silicon Valley. We saw these kind of big valuations. You said that things are a little bit different this time because there's more scrutiny. Can you talk about that more? Why is it so different?
Well, I think Wall Street doesn't learn lessons very often, but that was such a big one that I think a lot of people remembered it. And I think people were financing business plans in the .com era. And I think now people are financing businesses. And I think people were so burned, and the investors were so burned. And these companies, they were financing business plans with the public market. This is private market transactions, so it's a very different level of investment, and it's not OPM, right? It's their money this time. So I think there's a lot of reasons they're looking more carefully.
Are you surprised, though, that the Goldmans and the JP Morgans would want to get in on this? Are you surprised by that?
Well, not really, because I think they believe, having looked at these companies, that the valuations are still climbing. And also, I think, whereas people pretend there's Chinese walls between these businesses, if you do put in $450 million into Facebook or whatever they're putting into Twitter, there's more business down the road. And while they are investing their clients' money, it does redound to the benefit of the house, and one should not presume that those things are totally discreet.
Kim, what do you make about this public fight that we saw between two big names in the management world, right? Bruce Berkowitz and David Einhorn.
Well, I think it's a continuation of an evolution of corporate boardroom life, and I think it all started, frankly, with Mike Milken in the '80s when he basically said, boards don't own companies, management don't own companies, the shareholders own companies, and then we've gone through waves since then when boards have reasserted themselves and treated companies as if they were their own private playgrounds. And I think this is a terrific development. I think it's what ought to happen.
Yay for a shareholder, yeah.
There
Correct.
you go, exactly.
Okay, and talking about shareholders, we had Warren Buffett's annual shareholder letter over the weekend, and I just want to read you one part of it that everybody's quoting today about Buffett, where he was talking about acquisitions. He says, quote, "Our elephant gun has been reloaded, and my trigger finger, it's hard to say that, trigger finger is itchy." He's got $38 billion in cash. What do you think he's going to do with it?
Well, knowing him, he's going to find an elephant. And I think he's going to find an elephant probably along the lines of the elephants he's found in the past. This has been, a Graham and Dodd guy for a long time,
right.
and he is a value investor, good cash flows. He probably is not going to invest in Twitter. Call me crazy, but I think he's going to find his elephant.
On Wall Street, when Buffett makes an announcement like this, do the bankers get excited? Does this open the door for them to say, hey, Buffett's going to start buying, you should be buying, you guys should start doing some M&A too?
Well, one nice thing about Wall Street is they could take advantage of any statement by anybody. So if Warren Buffett said, well, market's going bad, I'm going to be selling assets, Wall Street would be going to its clients and said, you should be selling. So the fact that he now says, I'm going to be buying, they will go to their clients and say, you should be buying. But I think it is, more importantly, it does have barometric value, right? I mean, the fact that Warren Buffett has this sense that, that good cash flow businesses are worth buying now is a bit of an insight into what he thinks about this market.
Mm-hmm. Well, last year he bought Burlington Northern.
He sure did.
$26 billion deal. So in the future, where do you think he's going to put that money? What do you think represents an investment like that? And where do you think he's going to sort of avoid the landmines?
I don't really know where he will buy. What I do know is that the nature of the business he buys. And so, good, basic American industry, whether it's Coca-Cola or whether it's Burlington, whether it's Gannett or Washington Post, whatever those companies are that provide those kinds of cash flows for him, where he sees a low valuation is where he's going to pounce. Which one it's going to be, I have no idea. One
thing he also said was Berkshire's a pretty good home if you want your company to grow, maybe more so than going public or being acquired by a private equity firm or somebody in your industry. How do private equity firms compete with a statement like that, let's say?
Well, I think the private equity firm mandate is a little bit to make management rich. And so if you're the CEO of a company and the private equity firm comes knocking, they say, here, come here, and we're going to give you a big piece, and we're going to take this company forward. It's also done largely with financial engineering, even though there's a mantra now about operational efficiencies and growth and strategy. It's still largely financial. You come to work for Berkshire and bring your company into the Berkshire fold, and it's going to be much more about growing the business, running the business, and having a chance to take the business to another level. Right. An entirely different strategy.
Longer term, much longer term.
Absolutely.
Kim, thank you very much for joining us again. Really appreciate it. It's been a while. Kim Fennebresque, the chairman of Dahlman Rose.